Good morning, beautiful people. We are live.
The sun is rising, the sky is blue. Good morning, grand risings. Let's see what's new. It's the time of day for Sonia and crew. Good morning, grand risings. It's time to wake up with Sonia Poulton. Sonia Poulton.
And grand rising to you. One day I'll get that right. How are you? I hope you are well. Welcome to Wake Up, the show that pulls no punches. I'm journalist and broadcaster Sonia Poulton. Welcome to the show that knows we are in an era of real eyes, real lies, and all that good stuff. It can get a bit heated around here at times. I do not pay lip service to any political party, and I don't hold back in expressing that. Equally, I am more than happy to hear your views, even if I think they suck. So let's do this. How are you, people? How are you, wonderful, wonderful people? I still got my hair clip in. Let me just take it out. There you go. How are you doing? I can see that the live chat is already packed. Thank you for being here. It's so spring-like outside. I don't know what it's like where you are, but it's absolutely glorious here. Real madness, says Soul Sound. Hi to all, says Pickles. Hello, Nikki. Nikki, I missed your birthday on Friday. I thought it was Shins. Happy birthday to you, Nikki Blossom. And Mels, how are you? Lovely to see you. And Synchronized Soul, good morning. And Kate Langford and Drumstick and Vanessa, how are you all? And Psychic Biker Gal, sounds great. What's on today's show? Our guests will be Catherine O'Sullivan and Oliver Lawrence. Catherine's been with us before. Catherine's son Jack went missing 2 years ago, and both Catherine and Oliver will be joining us to update us on what is happening in the search for Catherine's son. And we'll also be joined by Graham Moore of English Exit. He'll be talking about the Pied Pipers who are leading us astray and how we can all come together and improve matters somewhat for us all. And the news this week, we'll be looking at a puberty blockers trial, Operation Mountbatten, Mandelson and Leslie Wexner, formerly of Victoria's Secrets. That's Leslie Wexner, not Mandelson. Mandelson's got enough problems on his hands without also being involved with Victoria's Secrets. And I want to also dig deep about Michael Jackson, because after the Epstein files and how he featured, I'll be asking, did they lie about Michael Jackson in order to distract us? I'm going to look at that, and I'm going to be looking also at previous interviews I've done with people, well, with a person, Thomas Mesereau, his former defense lawyer, who believes absolutely that he died an innocent man. And I'll also be referring back to an interview I did with journalist Roxanne Johnson, who believes that he absolutely was not an innocent man when he died. And as ever, of course, your shout. And at the end, I want to ask, have you reached the Sophia stage yet? So how are you all? I hope you're well. And I went at the weekend, I went to visit Pope's Grotto. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's in Twickenham. It's wonderful. And I went to visit, and I've got a little video to show you at the end of the show. So hello and welcome to you all. Save yourself. Don't need Pied Pipers, says DJ Marcuson. Morning, Stephen. How are you? So this week, what's coming up? Well, tomorrow is the plea hearing for Russell Brand on the new rape charges, the new rape allegations that he's facing. On Wednesday, Parliament in the UK returns, PMQs return after half-term recess. They have as many holidays as schools. It's outrageous. It's outrageous. Nobody else has as many holidays as politicians, other than school children. And on Thursday, Hillary Clinton will be deposed as part of the US House investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. And the following day, on Friday, her husband will be deposed as part of the same investigation. And on Thursday, immigration statistics in the UK for the year ending December 2025. Think that's going to be interesting. And did you hear the news about this pair? Craig and Lindsay Foreman. We've been joined before by Lindsay's son, Joe Bennett. They're a British couple from East Sussex. And last week, they were sentenced to 10 years in prison in Iran. They were convicted of espionage by the Tehran Revolutionary Court, a charge they and their family strenuously deny. The couple were detained on the 3rd of January 2025 while crossing Iran during a round-the-world motorcycle trip toward Australia. Iranian authorities accused them of gathering information under the guise of tourism. Human rights groups and family members believe they are being used as bargaining chips or hostage diplomacy. Their trial lasted approximately 3 hours, during which they were reportedly not allowed to present a defense or see evidence against them. Sounds like a kangaroo court to me. When Joe appeared before, I had quite a few responses for all over social media, emails, etc. And people felt that they were guilty. Not everybody, of course, but some people felt that they were guilty, that there was suspicious activities. I'm not one of them, I should point out. The couple is being held at Tehran's notorious Evin prison, known for its harsh conditions and treatment of political prisoners. Craig is held in the prison's political wing, while Lindsay is in the women's section. In late 2025, they launched a hunger strike to protest their lack of due process. UK government, the Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper, condemned the sentence as completely appalling and totally unjustifiable. And their son, Joe, as I say, been on with us before. He's led a public campaign, including a petition with over 70,000 signatures delivered to 10 Downing Street, calling for more decisive government action. Joe, what do you want? Yvette Cooper saying a few words. Wow, big whoop. So must be horrible, horrible, horrible situation all round. Yvette Cooper, lol. NCP, I know, right? I see, interesting, that puberty blockers trial has been halted. We talked about it before. The so-named Pathways, a UK clinical trial designed to study the effects of puberty blockers on children with gender dysphoria, was paused last week following safety concerns that were raised by the MHRA, which is the regulatory body, Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency. And the regulator cited unquantified risks and long-term biological harms, insisting on a higher minimum age for participants. So originally, the study was going to start at the age of 10, and the MHRA is saying, no, that needs to be older. The trial, led by King's College London, was designed to investigate the impact of puberty suppressing hormones on the physical, social and emotional well-being of children. And that follows a 2024 ban on routine prescriptions for under 18s in the UK. The trial was initiated following the CAS review, which identified weak evidence regarding the long-term effects of the medication. So you think, I don't even think that this needs a doctor or an expert to know that if you pause someone's puberty, they're never going to be the same again. You've disrupted a natural process. I mean, that seems absolutely evident to me. The study originally, as I say, was intended to focus on children as young as 10. The MHRA have a problem with that, as indeed they should. Sir Jonathan Montgomery, Professor of Healthcare Law at University College London, said that the letter also states that these are scientific issues and not a result of legal action, because obviously people are constantly suing these mad, crazy people. And he goes on to say the focus here is on safety, as it should be. This pause shows the regulatory process working properly and in the interests of participants. You all need to be kept away from children. That's the bottom line. They all need to be kept away from children. Leave our kids alone, says Mary. Mary is echoing exactly my words. And just a couple more quick stories before I bring in my first guest. I see that the Crowborough Army Barracks, the Home Office, is doing all they can to prove their immigration critics wrong. Not. So the Army Barracks in Crowborough now has increased from 27 migrants to 80 since the end of January, when they were bussed in the dark of night. Absolutely ridiculous. And it's going to be increasing further. And there's a community group, Crowborough Shield, led by mother of four, Kim Bailey, taking the Home Office to court over its plans to house 540 single male asylum seekers at the former army training camp in its bid to close migrant hotels. So, because obviously it's cost an absolute fortune for us to have migrant hotels, but they're still not tackling the actual root problem. It's ridiculous. It's literally just moving the problem from one army base to another. And big up yourself, Dr. David Cartland. I see that you were trending yesterday on X, formerly Twitter. He's been posting images of the trolls who have targeted him and eventually led to him losing his job. He was, of course, with us last Monday. I will put a video link in the description to his interview. And it was so brilliant to see him trending. He has been abysmally treated by the regulators, by the authorities, by the GMC. The man has been struck off, barred from working with vulnerable adults and children. And what was his crime? His crime was standing up to be counted as a doctor should during C19. That's how they punish you. That's exactly how they punish you. He was on Sheep Farm as well. Lovely to hear it. Let it spread far and wide. Did they receive their Valentine's cards? Who are you talking about? Not sure what. Justice for Dr. David Cartland Cameron. Why am I saying Cameron? How weird. Let's welcome in our first guest. He's here and looking as pucker as ever. Here he is. Graham Moore. How are you, Graham? You always look so wonderfully smart. So impressive.
Thank you. But I do represent the English Constitution Society and the English Constitution Party when I go on air. So I do try.
Well, you look fabulous. Thank you for trying very much. You look great. Graham Moore, everybody. Always good to have him with us. English Exit on social media. Graham, is it fair to say that if people knew more about the English Constitution, which you represent, we would have less problems in England?
Massively so. The English are not represented at all in Parliament. I would say today there's only one single and he's only half and half English MP, and that's Rupert Lowe. And I say that because he's mentioned the English Bill of Rights in Parliament, and he's mentioned our rights on a number of occasions. So if we were constitutionally governed as we should be, and our constitution is not being enforced by judges or the system, England would be in a much better place than it is now. 100%, definitely.
How so?
Well, again, there's a lot of talk about ethno-nationalism, and I understand their point, and I believe they have valid points, by the way. You would not have David Lammy, Diana Abbott, Sadiq Khan, or any of these people as mayors or MPs or lords under the English constitutional settlement, which was the Act of Settlement of 1701, which actually banned people that were, you could not have a position of power as an MP or prophet in England unless you was born of English parents. So just to make sure, this is why it is not about ethno-nationalism. It was because the Dutch, who had succeeded in helping us overthrow the tyranny of a Catholic regime, started to take liberties. They've been in power some time. They started taking our rights away. They started to ship out profits to Holland, etc. So it was aimed at the Dutch, who everyone should know are white. Right, it was about culture and their culture of robbing us as the English, and not just financially, but also of our rights. They started to change the culture of England, and Queen Anne and a number of others stepped in and stopped it, basically, with the Acts of Settlement. Now, what people should be aware of is the Fabian Society and a guy called Clement Attlee, who was the Prime Minister in 1948, so just after the Second World War. By the way, people, look around you. We lost the Second World War, right? And we lost to the Soviet Union. Clement Attlee was a Fabian, and he brought in an act called the British Nationality Act of 1948 that removed the protections that protected our culture and the English way of life. he did that. That was a Fabian that did that. So just to make sure everyone's aware, if we was to abolish everything that the Fabian Society and others push through Parliament that is an attack on England, we would recover England within 18 months.
Now, the only problem there, of course, we're in 2026, right? We live in a multicultural society, which I absolutely support. And I mean quite literally, because my daughter is mixed race. So it sounds very exclusionary what you're talking about. Are you talking about deporting people to even when they were born here?
So let me be clear on this. So what you're doing is quite typical of what I would describe as the slow march through the institutions, where people have been told that there is a difference between multicultural and multiracial, right? There is a big difference.
Okay.
So and when I say big difference, just to let everyone know this, I'm not just saying, I've got a token black friend. But I've got black friends and brown friends. We've got blacks and brown people in the English Constitution Party and the English Constitution Society who completely agree with us, right? If you've got 2 or 3 generations living here as English, you're not going to disrupt the culture of England. But if you come in, David Lammy is a prime example. His parents come from a communist nation in South America. And people need Guyana, and so did there's the woman who brought Brexit, whatever, I can't remember her name.
Gina Miller.
Gina Miller. Her father was the Attorney General,
true,
right, of all of that communism and what erupted in Guyana. So these people are now in positions in England.
I see a conflict.
And they should not be there, right? So I'm not suggesting, and this is where an English constitutionalist differs from what people describe as ethno-nationalism. I respect ethno-nationalist position because they are protecting their culture and their race. And we have just seen come out via the rape and torture inquiry that Rupert Lowe and his team have put on. We have just seen this system allow the rape and torture of white English working class girls.
Fact.
And these people are criminal, not just the people carrying out the rape and torture, but the people that allowed it to continue. And that's the thing that people have got to understand. So there is a difference between an ethno-nationalist. They don't like me, by the way, and to coin the phrase, I don't care, right? All I'm putting forward is the constitutional position. I speak to many black people and brown people who say to me, I don't want to be an MP. I just want England to be England again. Right?
Understood. And I do think that we kind of need a kind of demarcation line, because otherwise we lose all semblance of what England is supposed to be about. So I do get that. I absolutely do. But what we currently have, right, is a bunch of people who are all vying for the same vote. And they all appear to be Israeli Zionist infiltrators of British politics. And in that, I include Rupert Lowe, Nigel Farage, Tommy Robinson, Ben Habib. So these are infiltrators, as far as I'm concerned. They're representing a foreign power. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong at all. But I will say this: it's not just about the what I describe as the Jewish mafia, because again, we've got Jewish people in our party, and they love what I do, and they love what I say. And they say someone's got to speak for us, right? It's a bit like there is a Jewish mafia. It's been there for thousands of years. It is extremely powerful. Any form of organized crime in any society is extremely dangerous. And there is an organized Jewish mafia, but there is also the Jesuits. So England banned Jews on a number of occasions from England, but it didn't just ban the Jews, it banned Jesuits. Jesuits are the military arm of the Catholics. Not all Catholics. I was married to a Catholic for 33 years. I've got no issue with normal everyday Catholics, like I've got no issue with normal everyday Jews, right? Or normal everyday hardworking black or brown people that just want to fit in and get on. We ain't got a problem with that. So people need to talk about the Jesuits, and then I'll call them the 3 J's. It's the Jewish mafia, the Jesuits, and the jihadists. What are the jihadists? They was recreated, in effect, by the British in the 1800s. The lid had been put on, in effect, Islam as a violent organisation moving forward until the British wound it back up again. And if you read through history, you will see it, and it jumps off the page at you. So I just want to make sure. So to all just to let, and this audience may be aghast to understand the history of Israel. Israel wasn't going to be put into the Levant. It was actually going to be put into Uganda, right? They could create a state anywhere for them, right? So when you go back and read through the history, most people go to me, Uganda. And I say, yeah, go and read.
I didn't know that.
And they was going to put Israel into Uganda. The problem is they've put Israel in one of the most and tried to take control of one of the most volatile and oil, gas rich areas anywhere in the world, right? It's obvious going to have a problem. By the way, I've started to see a solution sneaking up in the background on this. And again, it's thinking out of the box and looking at the problem and saying, how do you solve the problem? It's not, all of these preconceptions need to be put to one side. And the English have always been adept at solving complex problems in law via the Constitution. So what people, your audience probably don't know, is if you void the Acts of Union, not abolish, void it, that means the British Parliament no longer exists anymore. It goes back to an English Parliament, a Scottish Parliament. The Wales are still part of England, and that's because of something that happened in 1536. And that can be dealt with. But the most important thing for your audience to be aware of, if you are a anti-Zionist, let's call them that, and plenty of people are, right? I do not support Zionism, right? I consider myself to be a true Christian, right? I do not support Zionism. Judaism and Zionism or Christianity is completely their opposites. But if you was to void the Acts of Union, and by the way, that's the nuclear option, if you want to call it that. There are other options, and I'll always look at the other options. The point is, Israel wouldn't exist anymore. And the reason it wouldn't is because the authority of the Balfour Agreement of 1917 is void, null and void. The 1923 Palestinian Agreement, null and void. The petition of 1948, null and void. And for your audience to be aware of this, and especially those that support Zionism, that Ergon and the Stern Gang were Jewish terrorist groups. Not only did they bomb at the King David Hotel in Jerusalem, they also bombed and killed and maimed many of our troops in Palestine that was there because they had been ordered to be there, not because they believed in a Jewish or Palestinian cause. They booby-trapped them bodies, and Ergon and Stern Gang sent a hit squad to England to assassinate the Foreign Secretary, right? That in 1946 that happened. So people need to understand they are a terrorist state, and someone needs to get hold of them and stop it, right? So, and again, people say to me, well, what about Palestine? Listen, I do not want war anywhere. Right. If we're not intelligent enough to have a conversation to stop wars, then there's a serious problem with human beings.
And that is, well, that's what we need to have, because on the surface, you and I are very different. But the more we talk, the more we realize that we do there are some things in common. We definitely want to stop kind of infiltrations. We don't want to lose identity, all of these important things, right? But I am deeply worried about these Pied Piper characters. Those are my descriptions, not necessarily yours. They do worry me. I feel they're leading people astray. Last week, we had the whole thing. Tommy Robinson undoubtedly is like a sort of superstar of that arena, right? Yeah. And last week we heard that ISIS were after him, and then he said he was leaving England, even though he doesn't live in England. Next thing we see is him in the US, and I'm wondering how he got into the US when it's so difficult, when Trump is quite literally banning people for social media posts? Any idea how Tommy Robinson got there and why he may be there?
So your audience should listen to what I'm saying. I-589 is a document that you fill out as a political, if you're claiming political asylum in America. I filled it out twice because I was going to go out there. The English are being oppressed and suppressed, even by Twitter, I may add. And I'm a constitutionalist. They should certainly not be taking me out on Twitter, which they have previously, just to make sure everyone's aware. This is only my personal opinion. I have no personal knowledge of it whatsoever. For him to enter the country, to be walking around and doing what he's doing, and I-589 means it negates any removal order. Once you put that in, it's the ultimate to stop you being removed from the country. You've then got a year, I believe it is, to prove your case in American courts that you are being persecuted in your country of origin, or are at risk of being killed, etc., for your political views. It's about politics rather than anything else. I believe that he has put in an I-589, just to make sure I'm clear on this. President Trump's personal lawyer is Jewish, and I'm not attacking him for that, but he also comes from Manchester in England.
Really?
Really. So when people, and again, they have now started putting forward in America that they are going to allow political asylum for what they describe as British Jews because of the continuation. Now, something else has happened in America, which is Alberta has started to rise, which is 3 times larger than Great Britain combined. I find it very strange that the person leading that, a lawyer, did his law degree at the London School of Economics, which is a Fabian University. Right? I think it's very strange that the rebel media are going to all these events and it is being publicised massively. And it could be a road where they start pushing Jewish people into Alberta rather than Israel. I don't know. That is supposition on my part. But what I'm saying to you is you have to think out of the box and you look at everything that's going on and see different pointers. But just to get back to another point that you made about Rupert Lowe. So first of all, Pied Pipers. The Pied Piper of all Pied Pipers is Nigel Farage.
We got it here.
I won't have anything to do with that man whatsoever. We could have solved the European Union problem a long time ago in 2014 with Scotland leaving the Union. We would have left both unions and we would have reset the whole situation, right? So he went up there and tried to persuade him to stay in. He puts the British Union before anything else, and that is wrong. In principle, there are tens of millions, certainly in the 50 million mark, of English people, right? So the Scots are 5 million, the Northern Irish are 1.9, 1.5 million for Wales. The big chunk of what they describe the UK is English, and the English need to rise. So to make sure everyone's aware of this, Nigel Farage and the way he is being put forward and the different people being put in place, it's fairly obvious that these people are being pulled into that party. Ben Habib, again, I do not support Ben Habib, and the reason is because he self-describes as a British Pakistani. I'm not interested in that. What I'm interested is the English taking back England and resetting our constitution, and it would be unconstitutional if Ben Habib was in any position of authority. It doesn't matter how much I like him. It would be unconstitutional.
No, I do understand. I do take your point. And we've talked about this before, how it seems that the English is one of the few who are not actually allowed to be English, right, and not allowed to take pride in the nation. And I totally get that. I really do. And so all of that's important. So, but all of these people, they set themselves up as great patriots, though, Graham. And has that been your experience? Have they been willing to engage with you?
Very few engage with me. I went to the launch in Great Yarmouth of the Rupert Lowe's new party, and I went to the protest the next day. I was so Restore, and I want to make sure your audience understand this. Rupert Lowe is a businessman. I've got more trust in him than I have in many others. He's also a farmer. He's a straight talker. He's highly intelligent. I'm not just bigging him up because I want people to vote for him. I'm telling you the truth as I see it. He is the only man that, and with his team, which is terrorizing the British establishment and the oligarch. So your audience should understand this. He never had the jab. He's now turned around and said, if we was in a position of authority and power, if we were the government, we would quash all convictions for people that were convicted for protesting against COVID jabs, right?
He did push lockdown, though, didn't he? I don't know about the jab, whether that's right or not, but he definitely pushed lockdown to what I've seen.
Well, what he's actually said is, and don't forget, people learn over time. So there were some things that he wasn't learning. He's now listening. He's showing that he can listen to the people, and he's listening to different people. But this is really important for your audience. He also said anyone who was fired, sacked for not taking the jab, and put in a position either convicted or fined. He said we're going to all convictions are going to be quashed and all fines refunded. He also said anyone that was sacked because of their position on what he described as not a vaccine, right? He said they would be compensated. But people are focusing on immigration. There's a serious migration problem in this country, and it needs to be reversed. He is not saying, this is on the migration. I've read his 100-page document. Like I say, I'm not like other people. I actually went to the launch of Restore.
Yeah, got
right?
you.
I sat there in the audience. It was freezing cold. There was over 1,000 people there. He had a standing ovation in Great Yarmouth. Lots of people have got respect for him. And I read his document, and it is, I class myself, I'm a paralegal, I'm a constitutionalist. I read through that document. That is a well-structured plan to resolve our issues. He is not saying, just to make sure if you've got family that are mixed race, etc. He is not saying that he's going to kick them people out of the country. What he is saying is, if, right, you are in this country and you are in social housing, you are unemployed, you are receiving benefits, and you are a foreigner, you will leave. It is not for the hardworking people of this country to support you, right? Get out. And there are plenty of them people, right, that are literally sitting back.
I understand. I hear you. Absolutely. And all of that is problematic. I get that. I really do. But the problem is that I've been around this bush many times, right? I've seen people come out. He's not in a huge position of power. Yes, he's an elected member of parliament, but he's still not in a huge position of power. And it's very easy to say you're going to do all of these things when you're not in power. You're a politician, Graham. You know how people do that. And so it's one thing saying what you're going to do when you're not in power, and quite another when you get into power, when you become the establishment. Now, I'm not a fan, but I think it is only fair to, and not saying that you're a fan, but you're kind of speaking on his behalf, but I think it's only fair to have a voice like yours doing that, because I absolutely laid into him last week about him being a businessman, about his history, about I'm not entirely convinced about how sincere he is. I do object strongly to his language, to this whole thing of waking up in the morning and which Muslim am I going to attack. It feels very much like an attack like that, Graham. You can disagree with me, but I do think what you're saying is also valid and needs to be heard. So, but don't you think that they're all dividing up the vote, though, a similar vote?
No, and I'm really pleased you brought that up. No, I don't. The slow march through the institutions has caused the demoralisation of the electorate by design, right? What do I mean by that? People have stopped voting. He's not interested in the Conservative and Union Party. He's not interested in the tribal Labour voters. He's not interested in the Reform voters who have all been suckered in by Nigel Farage. He's interested in the people that have given up, and he's giving them hope. And he's saying to them people, this is our plan. The problem is people are not looking at the plan. And what is actually, they're focusing, the media is pulling people into this emotional situation with re-immigration, right? There are plenty of other things he said. And just to make sure I'm clear on this, right? I have been exceptionally negative, even to the point I had to do a video and apologise of my own accord because I was so negative. Because in my opinion, he is still not talking about England and the English enough. We are the people that will win this election.
Got you. I mean, I do get you. And I remember there was like a dinner, wasn't there? A dinner get together. I think it was like at the end of last year. Did you see that dinner get together where there was Reform? So there was people like Julia Hartley-Brewer. There was like Richard Tice. There was Isabel Oakeshaw. Somebody had said to me that Rupert Lowe was there. I haven't been able to confirm that. But essentially, it was all these people from those parties all came together for a very posh dinner in central London. And there is footage online about it. It's very interesting. So it tends to tell me that really they're kind of like all on the same side, in the same way as Farage and Keir Starmer. They're really mates. They get on very well in Parliament. We've seen that. Do you feel, though, that it's like some big illusion that we're being fed to do with all this politics?
I absolutely do believe that. Certainly with Nigel Farage, he is an establishment through and through part. You can tell by the people that they're getting on board. It's almost laughable that they really do think that the English, the Scots, the Welsh and the Irish are going to suffer that. We're already showing we're not. So do I think that... So I'll put it in a different way to people. I deal with the law and the Constitution. I'm a normal, everyday, working class person. I have studied law for 30 years. I've got law books. This is not a green screen. This is a real library and real law books. My point to the audience is that if you go up before a judge and then you research the judge, as I do, right? Because I look at their previous. It's a bit like being a boxer. You need to understand how someone fights.
I do the same thing. But
you have to be a researcher. And then when you look at those judges and their father was a judge and their father's father was a judge, right? That's an oligarch system that protects itself, right? And it's only people like me that will stand up in a court and then start talking to these people. They don't care about us. But what I am seeing with Rupert Lowe is he communicates with the people. What I've said to him is you need to stop this nonsense and start talking about the English, because it is the English that will take the country back. And we are the nicest people on the planet. We was the ones who give people the common law. We give people the common law.
I understand. Let me read some comments for you. No One's Flower says he wants England to be its own country as it was in the 80s. What's wrong with that? Shug says, wouldn't it be easier just to expose the corruption and let the system fall than try to fight on their rigged terms? Ange says, if you still vote, then you're extremely dumb and stupid. Paul said they all say great things, then do nothing. Politicians can't change the system. People are sick and tired of voting for a person and finding out they've got a whole globalist structure in the end. So just give us a final say on all of this, Graham.
Right. So no one, and again, Rupert Lowe has said this, and I am not overly promoting Rupert Lowe. It's just that he's the most positive of the positive I can see at the moment. And I do go into detail. Like I say, I've read his 100-page plan, right? The civil service, English law states that fascists and communists should be purged from the civil service. That's what it actually states in the law book itself, Halsby's Laws of England, paragraph 1310, volume 8. People need to understand that the civil service is corrupt to the core through communism. We lost the Second World War. What we need is a real leader that understands that and will remove the corruption from the civil service and deliver what the people want, not what the civil service want. And that structure is now being built as far as I can see.
Interesting. Thank you for joining us this morning with as much passion as you always bring to the table, everybody. This is Graham Moore from the English Constitution Society. If I haven't already, I will absolutely put a link so you can find out more about what Graham is up to, and his fabulous assistant, Lucy, who's in the comments, and she's fabulous. We love her. What's up, Graham?
And I'll say one last thing, that we have a seminar in Cumbria, Barrow in Furness, where I will be talking about the English Constitution, going through our laws and explaining it to people. And that is on the 28th of this month. So next Saturday, and it's at a football ground there. If anyone wants to come along to that, please do. And I will be explaining the English Constitution to people.
Got you. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a fabulous week. And to you too. Stay smart. Take good care of yourself. Graham Moore, everybody. Wonderful to have him with us. Be lucky indeed. That is such a London expression. Take care of yourself. Lovely to have him with us. I mean, you know, as I say, on the surface, Graham and I, often it would appear that we don't necessarily have a lot in common, but he's a learned individual. He's looked at the Constitution, and we definitely need to understand more about the English Constitution. I think that it should be taught in primary schools, but hey, what do I know? Before I bring in my next guest, I just want to say this very quickly. I was talking with a friend at the weekend about how there should be a recognized code word that women can use if they've been kidnapped or are in danger. And it turns out that there is. Guess what it is, kids? It's pizza. Pizza is the recognized code word. Apparently, if you are in danger, you call 999, or if you're in America, 911, or whatever your local code is, and ask for a pizza. They will know you need help. Did you know that? Did you know that? Yeah, Randy. Apparently so. Pizza, of course. So remember that. Yes, Soul Sound. Yes, it is. Google it. No, don't Google it. Use a lesser used search engine. Yes, Humphrey. Yes, Lucy. I mean, I just deliver the information. Yes, absolutely. Go check it out, people. Pizza was mentioned way too many times in the Epstein file, says Buck Rogers. No idea. Too big a secret. No way. Way. Healing guidance. Way. Right. But what if you really want a pizza? But then you wouldn't be ringing 999, would you? Why would you be ringing 999 for a pizza? Are you that type of dodgy person, DJ Markson? Because we need less of that. Hope you're all well out there. There's also a hand signal. There is. I can't remember what it is. Is it like that, where you do the very quick? Not quite sure. Yes, drumstick. Got you. Right. I want to bring in my next guest. Really important stuff. Catherine has been with us on a number of occasions before to talk about her missing son, Jack O'Sullivan, who went missing in Bristol on the 2nd of March, 2023, I believe it was. He's not been seen since. As I say, Catherine's been with us on a number of occasions. Here she is this morning. Good morning to you, Catherine.
Good morning. Hi.
It's I always, whenever I see you, all I ever want to do is just reach out across the screen and just hug you, give you the biggest hug possible. And it's very painful that you have to keep rocking up here and that we don't have any forward movement. But actually, I think we're getting somewhere. And I want to bring in my next guest, who is Oliver Lawrence. Good morning to you, Oliver. How are you?
Yeah, morning, Sonia. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. You're from Curriculum, right? And that's an independent investigators. And now you've got involved in the search for Jack. So first of all, before I come to you, Oliver, Catherine, I just want to do a check on you, how you are. It's 2 years almost now. And how are you feeling? How are you coping?
Well, it's very difficult to put into words, to be honest with you. But we have to. There's no choice in this. We have to cope. We have to keep going. It's really a horrible place to be. It's the only way I can really describe it is I'm on a roller coaster from hell and I can't get off. It is truly on a daily basis. It's hard to get through a day sometimes, but that's what we have to do. We have to keep going. There's no choice in this matter.
I think you're amazingly strong. You're doing a phenomenal job. And of course, you've got Oliver involved. And this is really some phenomenal stuff. Oliver, I read the report that was compiled by yourself and your colleagues. I thought it was really impressive. It was very in-depth, extensive, but also it's compassionate. It didn't feel like I was reading some clinical document where you were so detached from what you are doing. So tell me, why have you got involved in the search for Jack?
Yeah, good morning, Sonia. Thanks very much indeed for having me. Yeah, we got involved with Catherine, Allen and Ben at the latter part of last year. We came in to essentially carry out a review of work already carried out to date in relation to Jack's disappearance on the 2nd of March 2024, with a view to trying to understand what the working hypotheses of the police were within Avon and Somerset Police, and what we felt could be done and where we felt there are opportunities for further lines of inquiry. You know, investigations of this magnitude are no small feat. And as you say, the report and the review that my colleague Steve Keir and myself completed at the latter part of November last year understood the human element to this. There are three incredibly important people behind that report in Alan, Catherine and Ben, but importantly, the most important one is Jack, and we can't forget that. You know, we've allowed over the months that we've been involved for Avon and Somerset Police to carry out investigations. And it's at this point now, I suppose, if I'm being brutally honest with you, that we're losing faith in that capability. And we've had to take the unprecedented step most recently in reaching out to the College of Policing for their overview, for their review. We are concerned that the investigation has lost its way. We've lost trust and confidence in the senior leadership team at Avon and Somerset Police. And we have asked, and we are lobbying for an independent force to come in and carry out a fresh investigation, not a review of the work already done, but a fresh investigation from start to finish. There are certainly elements of this inquiry that have been missed, elements of requests that have been made by Catherine, Allen and Ben, reasonable requests, I might add, to carry out inquiries which haven't been or have been chosen not to be followed up with, which when you've lost a child is incredibly distressing. So what we're currently sort of moving through this progress where we've been communicating back and forth with Avon and Somerset Police over a number of months. And I believe in recent weeks and in recent days, even, I think we're moving to a new force potentially in the coming weeks who will start that investigation from start to finish. But this is an incredibly complex matter. There are a number of moving parts to it, lots of information to be assessed and reviewed as we go forward. And part of our role within our investigative team, in terms of with our investigative experience, we may be former police officers. We don't carry warrant cards anymore. We have no greater powers than any other member of the public. But what we do have is a great deal of empathy, tenacity, and investigative know-how. We know where to go looking for these answers. We know what questions need to be asked. And we know ultimately what needs to be put together strategically to ensure that we can find a resolution. And importantly, and I must stress importantly, find Jack for Catherine, Allen and Ben.
Absolutely. And Catherine, obviously, I mean, I have people in the comments saying they only need to look at you and they feel like crying, because people feel such empathy for your situation, such compassion for what you are enduring. Now, as far as we understood, Jack, your son, 23 years old, and sorry, I got the year wrong. I'm still in 2025, but I knew it was 2 years. But Jack, your son, he went to a house party in Bristol. To our understanding, he'd left that house party, and the police hypothesis that they've been working on ever since the beginning, and rigidly so it would appear, is that Jack went into the water. But you've always said that essentially, until you find out what happened with Jack, you're not just going to accept that, right?
No, absolutely. From where we stand, the decisions have been made by the police on assumptions rather than on factual evidence. There's no evidence to suggest that has happened. Unfortunately, we've had many situations since that time where people have actually gone into the water. Some in that area, but all over the country. And what tends to happen, very tragically, is that these people are found, and that's just not been the case. I've seen what we believe was the last sighting of Jack. He is not on the water's edge, and he is walking away from the water. His messages to me read that his fully intended coming home and getting a taxi home. And I think, as I say, a lot of it's been based on assumptions. And the thought process of statistics that say this is what happens to men on nights out when they've been to parties or clubs or things like that. And that's just not what we think.
Oliver, what can you tell me about what happened recently? I understand that somebody had contacted Catherine claiming to have murdered Jack. What happened?
As you can imagine, through these investigations and when public appeals are made, you get a number of people that come forward making all sorts of claims, either responsibility, either with significant knowledge and wanting to assist, but leading you down into a myriad of different rabbit warrens and actually not getting any further forward, just becoming a pure distraction. And we had one of those, as you quite rightly pointed out, very recently. An individual within the United Kingdom made an abhorrent claim to Catherine, Alan and Ben via email. And these sort of claims we've received before, but we move very quickly on them in terms of trying to identify people that feel that they can hide behind a veil of anonymity behind an email account. We were able to identify this individual within 48 hours and have them in police custody. So part of my presence here today is to sort of put people on notice, really, that one of my roles is protecting this family as much as I possibly can from these bad actors. Any individual that decides to send an erroneous email and make that nefarious decision to send such abhorrent, commentary, conduct of any kind, I will ensure that we do everything we possibly can in our power to hold them to full account. And we did on this occasion. Now, I'm not going to disclose where in the United Kingdom this occurred and what force was responsible for putting this individual into police custody. That investigation is still very much live, so we don't want to jeopardize the consequences of that. But part of our role has been equally to support the family when those sort of requests come in, and we do move very, very quickly. And as I say, although we don't have warrant cards anymore, we have a tenacity and an ability to be able to find details out in a very lawful way and hold people to the highest level of account. So I would caution people as their actions. We are very open and encourage people to send us information which they feel may assist us in our inquiries. But when people step over the line, when they're trying to get their own little bit of a thrill, or for whatever reason have a sick fancy about these types of matters, we will come after them with everything we've got.
I can't actually get my head around the type of character who would do something like that to a family. I just find it extraordinary. I'm so glad that you're there essentially as a buffer now, Oliver. I think that's a fantastic, important role. Catherine, oftentimes in situations like this, people look at what was the psychological state of the individual before they went missing. What can you tell us about Jack's psychological state?
What I can say is I would describe it as he just entered the best period of his life to date. He was doing incredibly well with his studies and had huge ambitions to be a lawyer and was making good progress. He didn't particularly want to go out that evening because he'd been working, and he was sort of in a kind of place where he didn't want to stop at that point because he had exams that were coming up. But I persuaded him to go out and have a bit of fun. But he was, I would definitely say that he was in tremendous form. And he left to go out quite excited because there were new people, new friends that he'd only recently made contact with, and he was full of fun. He actually dropped me off when I was going out myself, and we laughed about getting home and not coming home too early. I said, just stay, have a bit of fun, and don't drive. Get a taxi, or I'll pick you up. So we have no reason at all to believe that he was in any way sort of struggling with his mental health, I suppose you're asking me about, but not at all. Absolutely not.
And mother to mother, I've done the same thing. Encourage my daughter, go out, enjoy yourself. You're young. I want you to enjoy yourself. But those are the last words that, in some respect, that are with you. And that in itself must be very difficult because you just did what any parent would do. That is the reality. You know?
I mean, I'm tormented by this. This was the way I have to go through the rest of my time thinking, what if only. We were in text communication up until nearly 2:00 in the morning, and Jack was very insistent that he would make his own way home because he's a very independent person, and just said, you don't need to wait up, you don't need to come back out. I'm fine, and I'll just, I'm going to be a bit longer than I thought. So I just took that he was having a good time. But it was the last message said, all good, I'm taking a cab, see you in the morning. So yeah, it's very difficult to go over and over that.
Yes. But there's loads of support in the chat for you. As parents, completely understand the sentiment. Lenticular says, yes, I'd have done the same. Catherine. Lucy says, don't beat yourself up for saying something lovely. And that is the reality, right? So we're all kind of extending our love to you, Catherine, because we all hate seeing you go through this. Yes, it's a horror story, Soul Sound. It shouldn't be happening. But people are very impressed with Oliver's determination, which is absolutely wonderful. Let me just read you some of these comments. Which is it's always great. Oliver, sterling support, and I get a very determined vibe from Oliver. Says Mel's, me too. And the last time that Catherine was on, I had a lot of people who had approached me and said, "Is there any way that we can actually financially support this?" Well, now there is actually. Oliver, tell us, how can we financially support the search for Jack?
Yeah, so first of all, I just wanted to highlight, so previously the family had raised some funds to support with the early investigative and exploratory work that had been carried out. So in terms of searches, forensic work, the appointment of previous investigators prior to our appointment at the latter part of last year. In our review, we identified up to 5 or 6 working hypotheses. Any investigation develops a working hypothesis around what may have been a scenario in which led to Jack's disappearance. As Catherine has pointed out, there is nothing to indicate that there was mental health issues or for him just disappearing. He was in a great time of his life, a young, aspiring lawyer, spending time with friends. So there are a number of other working hypotheses that we've got to develop. And as an investigative team, what I'm proposing to do is to put together a very comprehensive team of senior investigators, ex-senior policing professionals who will now lead and champion this investigation and review document that we've put together. This is an unprecedented step. You would expect that policing would come to the fore and would lead the charge on these investigations. But we've come to a moment in this matter where myself as a senior investigative advisor to the family have to make a conscious decision of not only protecting them, but moving this forward in a direction which provides them with answers and ultimately conclusion as to sort of what has happened to Jack and ultimately to locate him. So we are launching today a second GoFundMe to support investigations going forward, which will involve further forensic work, further targeted searches, further independent interviewing of significant witnesses, not only locally in Bristol, but across the country who would have had involvement with Jack during that period. So there's lots to be done. I suppose we're seeking the public's assistance in being able to do that. I don't want Alan, Catherine and Ben having to worry about the financial implications of this work. I just want them to worry about their own health and well-being whilst I take hopefully the stress away from that part of it and lead the charge on that. Equally supporting the family in other areas, as I've pointed out, with some of these nefarious characters who make the erroneous decision to communicate with them with yucky information. We'll do all those things as we have done previously, but we want to move forward with this at pace, professionally, with a high sense of discipline. So yeah, there is a GoFundMe we've launched today, Sonia. So we would encourage anybody who can share just £1 or a couple of quid to support and to get behind us so that we can try and find out what's happened to young Jack.
And if I haven't already put it in the description, I would put it in immediately after the live stream ends. Catherine, you're doing a number of things. I think you're speaking at a missing persons event, aren't you, shortly? Have I got that right?
Yeah, I've been asked to speak, which it's not my field at all. But missing people have provided a lot of support to my family and myself. At times when we've reached out to the police, for example, and we haven't got that support, missing people have been there in the background. And they've asked me it sounds mad, but a live missing persons case to share my experience. So if that can help them in some small way, I'd like to give something back to them by just going through, what's happened, what we've had to do, and what we still continue to do. So yes, I'm going to speak if possible, and share our story.
I think you'll be a phenomenal and important addition, because there's really nothing like lived experience in situations like this, as Oliver well knows. Oliver, what can you tell me? You did allude to it. You didn't allude. You mentioned it earlier about the potential of another police force getting involved. What can you tell us?
So at the moment, we're in discussions with Avon and Somerset Police and a couple of forces as to their involvement in this matter, carrying out a fresh investigation from start to finish. That those talks have been ongoing. Obviously, the family and ourselves maintain a very well-viewed Facebook page, and often people ask what's going on in the background, and they feel because they haven't received regular updates that there isn't going on. But we've been in regular communications with the authorities over many, many months. Unfortunately, these things don't move quickly, and sometimes there's a lot of back and forth in terms of what our expectations are, what policing can achieve. You know, we're in an era here where, sadly, managing expectations of the public when it comes to policing, when you see budget cuts and other issues in terms of staffing challenges, those things shouldn't affect families like Catherine, Alan and Ben, but sadly they do. They have a significant impact. So, but that doesn't lead away from what I consider to be quite a disastrous set of circumstances around this investigation. But, so when you reach out to other forces for assistance, they have conflicting priorities. So what we're hoping in the coming days and weeks is that the College of Policing will hopefully maybe get involved and have some oversight over this particular matter. They're not commissioned to carry out investigations, but they do have a lot of very senior ex-police officers who sit within their advisory board with tremendous experience and expertise who could potentially come in and look at the police's work. We continue to communicate with Avon and Somerset Police at a local level, at a very senior level, I might add as well, in terms of our discussions, in terms of what they're able to disclose to us as an investigations team and what we can do to support the family in taking the investigation forward. So I'm optimistic, Sonia, that over the coming days that we'll have some significant answers and be able to move forward. But this has taken a while to get us to this point. But, as I say today, we've made a conscious decision to move this forward at pace so that we can support Catherine, Alan and Ben through what is an incredibly traumatic period of their lives.
I'm very grateful that you have. Mel said, I'd be happy to donate even a small amount in these awful times just to help another mother and her family. Michelle says, I feel for you, Catherine. I have a son the same age. It's just awful. And Lisa says, bless you, Catherine. You're a mum. You all a mum should be doing the very best for your son, Jack, sending so much love. I think it says it. I think I just read it wrong, but I think you essentially get the message. We support you around here. We're all hoping for the absolute best outcome for Jack. But of course, Catherine, you just want an answer at this point. I mean, obviously you want Jack returned like any mother would, right? And it's not impossible because, as Oliver said, they're developing all these other potential leads, these hypotheses that they're following. And there are a number of things that could have happened. Jack could have been taken against his will. That is possible. He could have been harmed by somebody, including somebody he knows. And one of the reasons I wanted to tackle the issue of psychological state, and I know that we've discussed it before, but obviously we have new viewers. They haven't necessarily seen you talk to me before, but it's often one that people first of all ask. And I feel it's an obstacle to get out of the way because, as you had told me before, he was entering the best period of his life. Everything was sort of coming together for him. So at this point, really, all of these things ongoing, you're developing the hypothesis. And I'm not even sure what I'm asking you here, really, other than just kind of to tell us, what do you want us to do? Other than donate, what else can we do?
Well, I think from my perspective, it's just keeping Jack's name out there. I'm so appreciative of you covering this morning because as time's gone on, I was told this. The only thing we can do is to keep talking about him, keep his name in the public eye, and just make sure the public are aware of the situation, because it's got very quiet. Not for us. This is never, ever going to go away until we find Jack. But it's become yesterday's news for a lot of people. And our situation hasn't changed from the 2nd of March 2024. We're still asking the same questions and we're still desperately wanting to find Jack. So from my perspective, I just ask everyone to share our appeal, keep Jack's name alive, keep that message out there, and just help us with any information that somebody might be sitting on some information that they really haven't felt that they've been able to share until now. Well, it's never too late. Just do the right thing, and any information, just get it to us.
Sharon says we really do need to get Jack's name and face out wide in the UK. I'm in Brighton. I keep looking. B says, how old is Jack? Jack is 25. Is that correct?
He will be 25 at the end of March. So yeah, nearly.
And where did he go missing? Bristol, Hotwells, if I remember correctly. Correct, Oliver?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so our investigations have always been centred around Hotwells and that particular area there where Jack was attending a party, around Granby Hill area as well. As you know, there's the Find Jack website is a great location for a resource in terms of wanting to either people to remember particular details. Obviously, Catherine was tremendous in her review of some of the CCTV and locate imagery of Jack on missed CCTV that the police didn't pick up on quite alarmingly. So that information is all still available. I want to reassure the public also, and those your viewers watching today, is that my colleagues and I aren't what I would call usual private detectives. You know, you get that stereotypical view of someone with a trench coat and binoculars. We are ex-senior police officers, corporate investigators who specialise in this type of work. So I want to reassure people the type of individuals that are overseeing this matter, you know, the skills and the expertise that we have brought to the O'Sullivan family and the support we're providing, I would like to think is second to none. And we are determined, I am particularly determined to support this family until we get a conclusion one way or another in terms of the help and support they need in finding Jack. You know, it's critically important. But as Catherine alluded to, the most important thing that we could ask for people to do is continue to share Jack's name, his photo, his image, and this story, right? This is about Jack. It's not about me. It's not about the media. It's not about the police. It's not about anybody else. It's about one individual and finding out where he is and what we can do to bring him home.
Thank you. Catherine, is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, I would like to publicly thank Oliver and his team, because they have really made a difference to my life and to my husband and my eldest son's life, just by giving us the belief that we are doing the right thing. You know, at times you think you're going mad because you've put so much trust and faith in the police, and we have been spectacularly let down, in my opinion. And what Oliver has done and his team have, you know, given us the belief that there is far more to be done and we must keep going. And their support has been, well, just second to none, really. It's hard to put into words how grateful we are.
I'm really glad to hear that. I'm so glad to hear that. That oddly enough comforts me, because I think about you so much, Catherine, you and your family. I really do. So take good care of yourself. Everybody, this is Catherine O'Sullivan and Oliver Lawrence, and we all are on the same page. We need to bring Jack home. That is what we need to do. Thank you so much, everybody. Please, if you are able, even if it's only £1, please support this cause. You know, I don't do this. You know, I don't often ask you to do this, but today is one of those exceptional days. Take good care of yourself, Catherine. Oliver, thank you for your sterling work, and I look forward to updates. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Take good care, Catherine. Poor lady. She shouldn't have to deal with this. The pain is unimaginable. I find it unimaginable. I can't get over it. And I obviously didn't know Oliver, but I can't get over it. Right. Such a handsome young man, says Michelle. Truly awful time for you, Catherine. Fingers crossed for even the smallest bit of information, says Sarah. Radiant young man. Yes, thank you, Oliver, for that professional clarification, says Healing Guidance. It's awful just how many people go missing. Sonia, do a short on Jack so we can share, please. You've got it, kids. I will get that done. What else? Sending love, Catherine, says Rachel. Just hopped on to see you're on again. Always in my thoughts. Aurora says Jack has beautiful eyes. What a handsome young man. M is holding space for Catherine. And Soul Sound says much love, Kath and Ollie. Great stuff. Wonderful stuff. We all send love. Yes, indeed we do, Stephen. Drumstick says keep going. Catherine and Oliver, you can tell huge amount of support on the stream. And people often write to me and mention Catherine because it's just haunting. I mean, we're all haunted by it. I mean, that's just kind of like the reality. Okay, right. What to talk about next? I think we've all seen this picture, haven't we? And I think this is the clearest indication of what went down. This, of course, is the man formerly known as Prince Andrew. He was arrested last week on his 66th birthday. 6 cop cars showed up. Make of that what you will. He was arrested, held in custody for nearly 11 hours on suspicion of misconduct in public office in having shared confidential trade information with his friend Jeffrey Epstein when Andrew was a trade envoy, a job that he got as a thanks to thanks to Peter Mandelson, who's also been in a lot of trouble about his close connection to Jeffrey Epstein. And for me, there is no way on earth that Andrew would have been arrested was the Queen still alive. They are above the law. I don't care what anybody says, but you know what's upset me about this, right? Is that the point is that child abuse has left police completely unmoved, right? The potential for child abuse, the potential that Virginia Giuffre, even though she wasn't a child in the eyes of British law, but she was trafficked. Of that, I'm in no doubt whatsoever, right? And there is a great deal of confirmation in the files that the picture is legitimate, that she really did sleep with Andrew. Well, if you're trafficked, I think the idea of somebody like sleeping with or having sex with is kind of null and void, because if you're trafficked, you're raped. Right. So it just upsets me that, like, the Metropolitan Police refused to act. They refused to act when the Virginia Giuffre allegations came out. But what happens is that the police, and I think it's a different police, I think it's Thames Valley, but nonetheless still police, and it will have still have been in conversation in part with the palace. And it is so abhorrent. It's such a statement of our world that child abuse seems to leave the police completely unmoved in actually doing anything, but potential leaking of trade secrets, i.e. to do with business, sprints them into action, because that's the take-home message that they sent us. And Andrew is extremely vulnerable now, and pretty sure that Charles is looking at the exit, and William and Kate are absolutely driven to become king and queen and protect the crown. So, and obviously there are growing calls for the government to introduce legislation to remove Andrew from the line of succession, where he currently remains 8th in line to the throne. He will never, ever be king. It won't happen. Defence Minister Luke Pollard said stripping him of his right to succession was the right thing to do, regardless of the outcome of the police investigation. And he is only currently being investigated. And I see that Paul Page, who was one of his close protection officers, is talking. Paul's been talking for a long time. It's not like Paul's only just talking on the back of the Epstein files. He has tried to report it. He revealed that the staff nickname for Andrew was the C word. And I mean the C word, the word that I cannot say right here, but they used to call him the C, right? That's what they used to call him. So I've been thinking about this, because remember Carenza, one of our viewers, she wrote in the other week and she was like, what's it all going to amount to? And it does definitely feel like we're all kind of like being traumatized to a certain degree, like mass traumatization of people. And I'm always interested in looking for solutions. What could possibly be done to improve conditions? And I think I know what could, but whether they would agree to it is a whole other thing, right? Because if the world really wants to find out about the true levels of abuse and corruption with royals, with politicians and various officials, then we have to consider giving immunity to close protection officers. They know what has happened, and many are petrified to speak out for fear of being criminalized. Now, this is not my original idea, not by a long shot. This has been suggested to me before by police officers, including Dave Eden, former Hertfordshire cop, former Metropolitan Police cop, a whistleblower. And he'd talked to a lot of close protection officers. And I'm not talking about CPOs who actively took part in criminality, but those who witnessed or or were aware that something was taking place. And that's really, I think, one of the only ways that we're going to truly start to find out what has been happening over the last few decades. And I know it's hard for people because people are like, why should they have immunity? Well, that might be the only way to make them speak and speak about what has really taken place. And so, as I say, you know, it is something that other people have considered. And I think that it is a potential solution. Any thoughts in the comments? There's evidence in the files of them hunting people. Well, when you say evidence, what do you mean by that, Emma? Tell me. Fun Time says, I doubt anything will actually happen to him, mind you. And he still feels like a huge distraction. Now, this is interesting because I get that sense as well. When you get that level of bombardment, and one of the reasons that I'm interested is because I think this is like the first time in about 350 years when a royal has been arrested. So I think it's interesting from that perspective, like constitutionally. And then, of course, we have like Charles saying that the law must take its course about the arrest of Andrew. But, you know, the thing is that Charles has never been one not to interfere, because the idea that the law must take its course, I don't think for a second that the royal palace are just letting the law take its course. That sounds insane to me, because Charles has not done that in the past. He knew about his mate, Bishop Ball, right? He knew that Bishop Ball, who then went on to have multiple convictions for abusing young people, but Charles knew that his mate, Bishop Ball, had been cautioned, and Charles tried to interfere with the church discipline procedures. That's what Charles did when he knew that his mate had been cautioned for indecent assault on a young monk. That's what Charles did. So he's definitely one to interfere. And also, it would appear that almost certainly Charles knew about Andrew and his dodgy role as a trade envoy, and which, as I say, Peter Mandelson helped him to get. And Charles had been warned in 2019. A whistleblower had sent Charles a series of emails in 2019 in which the whistleblower talked about Andrew's problematic links to financier David Rowland, and saying that this man is abusing his royal links. Now, the problem that you have there is Andrew was married to a woman who spent as much money as he did. And none of them had a great deal of money, actually. And what ended up happening was Rowland had once given Andrew's ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson, £40,000 to help clear debts. And in 2017, he paid off a 1.5 million loan for Andrew. So Andrew and Sarah are up to their eyeballs with private money. And the whistleblower sent a second email to Mr. Rowland himself, copying in Charles's private secretary and the late Queen's solicitor. The message said, the evidence provided unequivocally proves that you have abused the royal family's name. Now, me personally, anybody knows, don't care about the royal family. I don't care if their name is abused. So I want them out anyway. I want them abolished. But I do think it is important that a trade envoy was doing really problematic things. And that is obviously an illegal matter. So if he is found to have conducted himself in an illegal way, which is essentially almost like spying on your own country, then he should be charged. Absolutely, he should. And that's kind of like my position on it. But I do take Mel's point, because we have been bombarded, haven't we, with the whole thing. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm exhausted from the whole Epstein files. It is very traumatizing indeed. Sticky Mark says, justice, no, they don't care. Thank you too. And thank you, by the way, in the super chat, you generous individual, Sticky Marks. And thank you, Kath, as well for super chat. I don't think they care. And I think that's really what's important. But there's other issues that are coming to the fore that are important as well. Like the Cassandra Centre had reported, for example, that Princess Eugenie, which is obviously Andrew's daughter, she has an anti-trafficking charity. And she spent just $97,206 on programs compared with $191,500 on salaries. Now, this is exactly my problem with charities, because the super rich do this all the time. They set up their foundations, they set up their charities, they look for public money, they then spend that largely on staff costs. And it's a bit of a scam, frankly, but I think highly problematic. But I do think that this is a constitutional issue, and I think it's worth, us keep returning to it. But again, as I say, I found the Epstein files really traumatic, and I'm somebody who's been abused, so that might be why. But I would imagine that anybody finds them traumatic. It's just some horrible stuff in there. And also, I don't think it helps. And I said this last week, when we hear these kind of very generalized areas of things that have happened. I mean, everybody knows it's my bugbear, this whole idea that the Podestas and Ghislaine Maxwell took Madeleine McCann. But, a lot of kind of really scammy grifters have got off on that sort of stuff, and they're really weird. But what I also want to know is, given that Andrew was arrested for potentially misconduct in public office, why hasn't Mandelson? They've taken stuff from Mandelson's home, but to my knowledge, unless he's been arrested this morning, he hasn't been arrested and questioned, given he's been accused of approximately the same thing as Andrew. So I think that's interesting. I really do, because you see, Peter Mandelson, Andrew is a problem. They all want shot of Andrew, including the royal family. But Peter Mandelson is so tied into the political establishment that once you start to unpack Peter Mandelson's role, it may potentially implicate a lot of other people. And I think that's well worth considering. I also thought this testimony was very interesting. Leslie Wexner, he was questioned by the US House Oversight Committee regarding his long-term financial and personal ties to Jeffrey Epstein. There was a deposition which took place last Wednesday at Wexner's home. Then they released a video of it. Wexner testified for nearly 5 hours, stating he was naive, foolish, and gullible, and had been duped by a world-class con man. Listen, I don't want to swear around here, but all I want to say is F off. And when you get there, F off again. Leslie Wexner cannot convince me of any of this at all. Leslie Wexner was former boss of Victoria's Secrets. Victoria's Secrets, of course, where the models are half-starved and they often appear in very childlike costumes, and both Epstein and Wexner are very involved in that. And did anybody see when Wexner's lawyer leant across to him and said to him, I'm going to effing kill you if you answer another question with more than 5 words, okay? Because Wexner was giving very long answers. Lawyers don't like that, because when you give long answers, it can trip you up. And Wexner's in his 80s now or something. But the reality is that Jeffrey Epstein almost certainly would not have had his sphere of influence without Leslie Wexner. Leslie Wexner granted Jeffrey Epstein near total control over his personal and business finances through a broad power of attorney signed in July 1991. Nobody knew why. Very weird. And that legal authority allowed Epstein to sign Wexner's name, hire staff, buy and sell properties, and borrow money on Wexner's behalf for approximately 16 years. So that's why I say Victoria's Secrets is a crime scene, unquestionably. And some of them have come out anyway, said it didn't feel good. That some of these models said they felt discomfort at being forced to wear provocative lingerie that was covered in toys so that the brand could target young teens and tweens. Yeah, horrible, vile stuff. Leslie Wexner has a lot to answer for. And by the way, while we're on the subject of it, did anybody see that imagery of Ghislaine? I mean, I say Ghislaine. Obviously, it's not supposed to be Ghislaine. It's in Canada, right? It appeared. Anybody seen it? Let me see if I can find it, because I don't know about you, but to me, that looks like Ghislaine. That really looks like Ghislaine. Let me just find it. Where are you? Forgive me, but you can only put up a certain amount of images on StreamYard, and I had overrun my amount, but here it is. So somebody with a camera had come across this woman and said Ghislaine, and then she answered in a voice that didn't sound like Ghislaine. I think that looks like the spitting image of Ghislaine Maxwell. And furthermore, the guy who was with her looks like her brother, Ian Maxwell. And that was in Canada. And now what we do know is that Maxwell was moved from a federal prison in Florida to a low security prison camp in Texas last summer. And that was after she participated in 2 days of interviews with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. And 2 weeks ago, she declined to answer questions from the House Oversight Committee lawmakers in a deposition, which was conducted in a video call to her prison. She indicated through a statement from her lawyer that she was prepared to speak fully and honestly if granted clemency. Don't we do screws on fingers anymore to make people speak? Oh no, that would be torture. People, is it just me, or do you actually see a likeness? And Soul Sound said, Soul Sound said, Glenn ain't locked up. And Sai said, this is Candace Owens style. Is it? I'm not convinced by that. But because it's just an image that I saw and a video that I saw. And I thought, yes, of course, in this picture, she looks shorter. That's probably just the way it's framed. Definitely her double if it isn't her. I think it's very similar. And I'm not convinced that she's in jail, because this woman knows a lot. And now it would appear, actually, we haven't had the full picture. Are you aware that she has been trying to block release of documents? They're fighting a requested release of 90,000 more pages. And they don't want them to reach the kind of like public gaze. The lawyers filed papers late on Friday in Manhattan federal court to try and block the release of these documents. And that was from the since settled defamation lawsuit that was brought a decade ago by Virginia Giuffre, who is now sadly passed. And that was against Maxwell. And Maxwell doesn't want that out. But I say full transparency. No, Sonia, I am not convinced that she is in jail either. And Pickle says, making everyone talk about and watch deviant behavior under the guise of raising awareness to program us to accepting. I'm not sure who that's aimed at, Pickle. I hope that's not aimed at me, because I've covered these topics for a very, very long time, and it would be remiss of me to ignore this. Mel said, I don't think she's in jail, but the woman did not have an English accent. They are taunting us. This was staged. Definitely her, says Michelle. So even in my comments, people are mixed about whether it is or isn't. I just thought it looked incredibly like her. Anyway, the Department of Justice officials said everything had been released, but it's not true. I mean, we know it, don't we? We know they've held back on stuff. They've redacted information, all this kind of stuff. Oh, not me. Thanks, Pickles. But I take your point, though, because it does, doesn't it feel like we're being traumatized? That's the thing. I think it's very like her Blue Nomad, but it might not be. But you know what? They say that we've all got a doppelganger. So there you go. So what else do I want to go on? I want to talk about Michael Jackson, actually, because I think Michael Jackson stuff is very interesting. Come on, Nikki. I got you. They lie a lot, says Shug. And I want to talk about the Michael Jackson thing, because this is some imagery, obviously, that came out. Now, the imagery that came out was the one that says fake on the, might be, I don't know whether it's your left or right, it's my left. And it's of, obviously, Bill Clinton, it's of Michael Jackson, it's of Diana Ross. And that you can see what appears to be children covered. So immediately you're like, those filthy, disgusting. But the real picture is actually of Diana Ross with her son and Michael Jackson with his children. And they were at an event together, and it was captured in the files. But it really made me think about it, because obviously the aim of that fake picture, I think, was to make Michael Jackson look increasingly guilty. And obviously Michael Jackson is no longer with us. And also what followed this was that then there were these unconfirmed reports that went viral on social media claiming that newly released Epstein files alleged that Michael Jackson acted as a spy on Epstein's island to protect minor girls and women from abuse. Now, that's a bit too much of a stretch for me personally. And the claim is that Michael Jackson allegedly noticed suspicious activities and worked quietly to shield potential victims. That feels very much like a pro Michael Jackson camp who would put that about. But these claims are obviously unsubstantiated. And the idea that he may or may not be spying, I'm not up on that. It may well be that just that he was at an event. I mean, so some of these pictures were released in December 2025. The remaining of them came out with the last kind of release. And there are witnesses and documents which indicate that Jackson met Epstein at his Palm Beach home during a house hunting trip. At the same time, Jackson was also reportedly sharing a financial advisor with Epstein. Joanna Yoberg, a victim of Epstein, testified she met Jackson at Epstein's Palm Beach residence, but explicitly stated that no wrongdoing occurred. She was never asked to give him a massage, which was Epstein's thing for his guests. And then, so there's a series of photos that have come out, including one with Michael Jackson and Epstein standing by a painting. Michael Jackson was known to be an art collector, as was Jeffrey Epstein. But in light of all of this and the fact that this image came out, which clearly problematic, in light of all of it, I wanted to revisit the allegations because I think that time is always an interesting thing, right? And obviously, Michael Jackson, starting in 1993, that we knew about, was repeatedly accused of being a child abuser. And the 1993 allegations, let me just switch that up. The 1993 allegations involved Geordie Chandler, as he became known. And it was Evan Chandler, Jordan Chandler's father, who had accused Michael Jackson of abuse, which was settled out of court. But what it did, of course, was it left this lasting public doubt. And then in 2005, there was a trial involving the Arvizo family, who claimed that they were held against their will at Neverland, Michael's big ranch, which he had built essentially for the public. And I always think it's interesting, right? I'm just interested in the truth, right? I'm kind of like, I try not to be biased anyway until I reach a conclusion about something. But I always think it's interesting when they talk about Neverland, the media, they always talk about children visiting Neverland. Actually, he built Neverland for children, for old age pensioners, for sick and disabled, and he allowed free usage of it. But it's always children that the media focus on because there is an agenda towards Michael Jackson and always has been. Of that, I'm in no doubt whatsoever. But in the 2005 trial, so that went ahead. He was represented by Tom Mesereau. I'm going to play you some. I interviewed Tom Mesereau before about it, and I listened back to what Tom had said yesterday, and it was really interesting, again, with a couple of years distance, to listen back to it. So just to be clear, I originally thought that Michael Jackson was guilty of all charges. Okay, I originally thought that, and that's, as someone who investigates child abuse, I was horrified by his admission to reporter Martin Bashir that he slept in a bed with boys. I was horrified by that. However, others have also come out, including actor Macaulay Culkin, as one example, saying MJ is absolutely not an abuser and he was smeared. And one of the reasons he was smeared was because he stood up to the music industry. Now, I think, first of all, that when you examine something like this and look at it kind of retrospectively, I think it's always important to look at the individual. I believe in kind of like individual differences. Michael Jackson led a very unique life. He was physically and mentally abused as a child. He'd come home from school and he would be beaten into rehearsing until 3 a.m. By all accounts, his father Joe was an absolute brute, by all accounts. And as I say, I went back through the Tom Mesereau stuff, and he was the defense lawyer who successfully defended Michael Jackson in 2005. And Mesereau took over the case, which resulted in an acquittal on all 14 charges. It was a slam dunk in Santa Barbara, California. And he remains an absolute staunch defender of Jackson's innocence, describing him as a kind, gentle, and exploited artist. And this is what Tom had to say in that regard.
Approach is not to believe anybody, not to believe the accusers, not to believe the accused. I try to walk in and study everything for myself, come to my own intuitions, my own instincts, intellectually look at the evidence, put it all together, see how I feel when I'm talking to my clients, see how I feel when I'm talking to witnesses, see how I feel when I watch the prosecutors. And it didn't take me very long in my relationship with Michael Jackson to realize that these charges were nonsense. They were utter nonsense.
So, and I'm just looking at some of the, oops, there you go. Sorry. When I try and do that, I'm just looking at some of the comments, right? And Reba said, I always believed he was mentally still a child because of what happened to him as a child. He loved the company of children because he wanted to relive the magic of childhood he never had. And Humphrey counters that, no need for a grown man to have a little boy in bed, no excuse. And Humphrey, believe me when I tell you, I felt and feel exactly the same way. No, not acceptable at all. And then, of course, what happened was that after Michael had been killed by his doctor, Conrad Murray, who was convicted of involuntary manslaughter in 2011 for Michael's 2009 death. So Murray was found guilty of acting with gross negligence by administering a lethal dose of the anaesthetic propofol as a sleep aid. And by all accounts, Michael was having so much administered to him. Murray served nearly 2 years of a 4-year sentence. And just as an aside, as a fact, is that the pills that were found in Whitney Houston's room and the pills that killed Michael Jackson were all supplied by the same pharmacy, Mickey Fine Pharmacy in Hollywood. I just think those sort of things are quite interesting, frankly. And everybody knows, well, not everybody, but people around here knows that I do not believe for a second that Whitney Houston's was an accidental death or otherwise. I believe that she was murdered, and Michael Jackson was murdered. He was murdered. There's no doubt about it. And so after his death, then you get all these people who start to come out. You have the film Leaving Neverland, which was the documentary after Michael's death, in which Wade Robson and James Safechuck alleged Michael Jackson had abused them. Now, they were the central characters in Leaving Neverland, and this is what Tom Mesereau has to say about Robson and Safechuck.
Robson. I met his mother, I met his sister. They were very staunch proponents of Michael Jackson. Wade impressed me as a very intelligent, very articulate, very charismatic, very likable young man. And he was adamant to me that he had never been molested or touched in any improper manner, and that these allegations were absurd. His mother and sister had traveled with Michael Jackson and Wade, and they also were powerful witnesses in support of Michael Jackson. So when I heard what was happening with Leaving Neverland, I was just in a state of shock.
I bet.
Because I spoke to this family, at length. I called him as a witness. He was subjected to a fierce cross-examination by Prosecutor Ron Zonin, who was a really good trial lawyer. And he stood his ground. And then he went and did some interviews, at least one interview that I know of afterwards, where he said the same thing. So, to suddenly hear someone turn things around this way as part of a financial endeavor called a civil lawsuit was very disheartening for me. And I'm just offended by the whole world of Leaving Neverland as I understand it.
Right. Got you. So
now the other accuser,
yes,
who I didn't call as a witness, he had signed a sworn declaration. I mean, the idea that years later, particularly when Michael Jackson isn't even around to defend himself,
right,
and respond to this, that they would take these harsh positions, to me is just inexcusable.
Now, I take his point there. I really do. Was their involvement in Leaving Neverland a financially kind of driven decision, or was it, and I have to bring this in as someone who really does understand abuse, was it that their abuser had now died and they no longer feared him? Because that's also possible. That is also possible. But nonetheless, they were essentially like star witnesses. Wade Robson, certainly star witness at the trial, which saw Michael acquitted of 14 charges. So obviously for somebody like Tom Mesereau, makes no sense whatsoever. And I talked to Tom Mesereau about the Martin Bashir interview and about that. And what Tom actually says was that Martin Bashir not only selectively edited that, he believes that he lied to Michael. He had told Michael that he had the trust of Princess Diana. Now that sounds highly likely, because we also now know that he lied to Princess Diana to get her interview. Martin Bashir at the time was kind of like a lead interviewer at the BBC. He's now absolutely disgraced because he's been proven to be a liar over and over again. But it was Martin Bashir that Michael Jackson admitted that he slept in bed with the Arvizos, or at least certainly one of the brothers. And what Tom Mesereau said was that they ended up actually being able to use Martin Bashir's report against him. And he believes that it enabled, in part, Michael to be acquitted, because what they had done was Michael had recorded the whole thing while Martin Bashir was there. And so they were able to show the courts the full and true conversation, which we never got. We got a doctored and edited version. But nonetheless, it did still say that Michael still admitted to sleeping in bed with the Arvizos. That is absolutely certain. Now, I just want to go back to the childhood thing and how he's not like us, because I do believe he was very childlike. I do, actually. And I think if you're like that, it is possible that he just kind of saw it as sleepovers with the boys, right? Again, it's not something I agree with at all. In part, I blame the families, because I don't blame the families above Michael. Michael's an adult, shouldn't have happened. But I also blame the families for being so overwhelmed with their desire about fame that they allowed their children to be vulnerable. And the problem is, right, somebody had said, and it's wrong. Not wrong. It's not. I get it. It's absolutely right. And that is, the payout still rankles, doesn't it? It's like, if you didn't abuse Geordie Chandler, why did you pay out? I mean, that is a question that many people ask. Okay. And I want to talk about that, because has anybody seen the documentary Square One, Michael Jackson, which I think is compelling. So what it is, it's a 2019 investigative documentary, which was directed by Danny Wu. It focuses on the 1993 abuse allegations by Evan Chandler and his son, 13-year-old Jordan Chandler, against Michael. And Evan Chandler had initially asked for $20 million in exchange for not accusing Michael Jackson publicly, but later was willing to accept $1 million. And after Michael Jackson refused to pay this sum, on August the 17th, 1993, Evan Chandler took Jordan, his son, to a psychiatrist, and Jordan told him that Jackson had molested him. So the psychiatrist did what he was supposed to, and that is he reported the allegations to the LA County Department of Children and Family Services and the LA Police Department. And that initiated an investigation shortly afterwards. And then in September, Jordan Chandler filed a lawsuit through his parents. And the film actually explains that how, after a failed attempt to postpone the civil trial against him until the criminal case was resolved, which would have been necessary for Jackson to protect his rights for a fair criminal trial. On January 25th, 1994, Michael then agreed to pay $15 million, in excess of $15 million, $15,331,250 to be precise. And that was to settle the Chandler civil lawsuit. And that agreement ended the civil case, but not the criminal investigation. The criminal investigation then went on until September 1994, when the district attorney announced that they declined to file charges against Jackson because Jordan was unwilling to testify. And they also revealed that that they'd only been informed of that decision on July the 6th, many months after the civil settlement. And the district attorney did not explain why they did not charge Jackson while Jordan was still willing to testify. So there was a period there where they could have charged Michael Jackson. Well, I would suggest that the reason that they didn't was because they didn't have the evidence to do so. And I would suggest that what we are dealing with here is very opportunistic parents. Evan Chandler was revealed to be a horrible individual. And I think also that when you're that famous, some of the advice would be settle it, get it out of the way so you can get on with your life. And certainly that was some of the stuff that Michael Jackson's camp had said afterwards. But if you are in any doubt, I would highly recommend that you watch that documentary. Last time I saw it was like on Amazon Prime. It's still available online, I'm sure about it. But I think it's a compelling documentary. And it features Jackson's nephew, Taj Jackson, I think, isn't he playing him in the new Michael Jackson film? Could have that wrong. Forgive me if I have. And the film essentially makes a case for Jackson's innocence, and it portrays him as a victim of tabloid journalism, legal manipulations, and other things, really. But some people say there is a smoking gun, say there are tapes of Michael Jackson with children. And again, we have the Neverland five employees who came out after his death and stating that they had been subject to wrongful termination suits in the 1990s. And several of these employees sued Jackson for wrongful termination and harassment. They reached a settlement in 1994, which included NDAs, very fairly standard, which is non-disclosure agreements that barred them from speaking about their experiences for years. But those sort of things generally tend to run out when the person dies, unless there is a clause stating otherwise. But, you know, again, you have these 5 individuals who have come out and said there are tapes, VHS tapes, and that followed the documentary Leaving Neverland. So where are they? Did these tapes really exist, or were these people just saying these things? Were they destroyed? I spoke to Roxanne Johnson last year. She has a YouTube channel. I will make sure to put a link in the description. Roxanne, like me, initially believed that he was potentially innocent, actually. And it was the Leaving Neverland film which changed her mind. Have a listen to what Roxanne has to say and why that did, in fact, change her mind. And I will say that Roxanne has become a very, very strong voice opposing Michael Jackson. She makes multiple videos. She's a journalist. And have a listen to what she had to say and why it changed her mind into believing that Michael Jackson was indeed guilty of the crimes that he was accused of.
Don't mind sharing. I myself am an adult survivor of childhood sexual abuse. And it's one of the reasons why when I watched Leaving Neverland, something inside me told me they're telling the truth, the level of detail, the emotions you see them going through, and even why they waited so long before they came out and addressed this. You know, I personally know I wasn't able to confront my abuser until well into my 30s after I had my first child, which is actually also something that Wade and Jimmy said after having their first child or first children. They realized this trauma was still there. And when you come face to face with your own child and that trauma, something happens there where you can't keep the secret anymore. And so personally, that's why I believe them.
So you're in no doubt now that he is guilty as charged and as accused?
Oh, definitely. With the things that I've seen, you have 7 men who have come out publicly to accuse Michael Jackson of sexual misconduct. Now, not just Jimmy and Wade, and not just Jordan Chandler and Gavin Arvizo. You have 3 more as well. And then you have John Branca, who's the executor of the Jackson estate, admitting in the Financial Times that after Leaving Neverland, 5 more accusers came to the estate and said that they were going to make their allegations public. And he admitted in this interview with the Financial Times that the estate did pay them between $16 and $20 million not to come forward. So, I mean, there's so many things pointing towards guilt now.
And I take her point, because we have to work with evidence. But I would like to present what I consider something which needs to always be considered when it comes to Michael Jackson. And that is Michael Jackson had for a long period of time upset people in the music industry. And I'm not just talking about upset them. I'm talking about upset them. And I put a very short video online last week, and it involved Tommy Mottola. Tommy Mottola used to be the big boss at Columbia Sony. And he also married Mariah Carey, and Mariah Carey, famously, very young girl. She was only 18. I think he was 47 and married with children when he met her. And he took her and he turned her into a pop star. But it was also a really problematic relationship. She was groomed. She was essentially a child still at 18 years old with this middle-aged man. Anyway, Tommy Mottola was the big boss of Michael Jackson's kind of record label. Michael was signed to Epic, and Epic was one of the labels under the big Columbia Sony banner. And I have to, at this point, refer to a comment in the chat from Markson saying, Michael Jackson, black or white lyrics. I am tired of this devil. I am tired of this stuff. I am tired of this business. And Michael Jackson very famously came out against Tommy Mottola on 2 occasions. And one of them was in London, and that was in June 2002. And then he came out again a month later in Harlem in July in 2002. And this is the video, and I'm sure you're familiar with it. And if you're not, well, have a listen.
You know, let me just say this. The tradition of great performers from, and I really want you to hear what I have to say, the tradition of great performers from Sammy Davis Jr. to James Brown to Jackie Wilson to Fred Astaire, Gene Kelly. The story is usually the same though. You know, these guys work really hard at their craft, but the story ends the same because the companies take advantage of them. They really do. And Sony, being being the artist that I am at Sony, I've generated several $1 billion for Sony, several billion, and they really thought that my mind is always on music and dancing, and it usually is, but they never thought that this performer, myself, would outthink them.
Yeah!
So we can't let them get away with what they're trying to do, because now I'm a free agent. So I'm leaving Sony a free agent, owning half of Sony. So I own half of Sony's, and I'm leaving them, and they're very angry at me because of it. But I just did good business, you know. And Tommy Mottola is a devil. I'm not supposed to say what I'm gonna say right now, but I have to let you in on a secret.
Say it.
So, please don't videotape what I'm going to say, okay? Turn that off, please. No what? I don't mind. Tape it. Tommy Mottola. Tommy Mottola is the president of the record division. He is he's a racist, and he's very, very, very devilish.
Now, that second one was with the Reverend Al Sharpton. It was in Harlem, and it was at a National Action Network event. And the first one was in London. And many people believe that that was probably the point that Michael's card was very seriously marked. I think it had been marked for a long time. He was having problems with his record label. And one of the things that he was talking about was about how Sony were failing to properly promote his album Invincible at that stage. And I get why people are torn about Michael Jackson's innocence or whether he's guilty or not. I get it, because the outline of it is really problematic. We have a problem with a grown man who admits to sharing a bed with children, but that grown man had arrested development. He didn't develop the same way as the rest of us. Of that, I'm in no doubt whatsoever. And I do think it's interesting that you have a situation where his star defense, people who were there to defend him, his star witnesses, then turned against him after he died. But again, have to allow for the fact that if they were abused, it could be like at last the abuser's gone, he can't hurt them anymore. And that does happen. That happened with Mohammed Al-Fayed, the former owner of Harrods. And I'm in no doubt whatsoever that a lot of those women coming forward were abused by Mohammed Al-Fayed. So those kind of things. Now, I think I've reached the point where I am convinced of Michael Jackson's innocence. And the reason that I am, and it's to take nothing away at all from the fact that I disagree with some of his actions, but the reason I am is that I think, one, he was vulnerable. He was vulnerable to opportunist exploiters like Evan Chandler's of this world, and people all around him, his staff who had been let go because of poor performance, and then they came out against him when he died, saying that there were all these tapes. Where are these tapes? That was a year ago, almost a year ago now, when they were saying there's all these videos of him with children. But the thing is, you never need to follow through. It's enough, and it generates multitude of headlines. It's enough to say there are tapes which exist of Michael Jackson with children, but we've never seen them. Right. Not that I would want to, frankly, but neither has anybody or has there been any substantial evidence or proof of that existing. So for me, the jury is absolutely out in terms of the testimony of his former staff. I think they are also really opportunistic and problematic. And I think that too many people have benefited financially from him. And I think the final straw, which made me kind of want to revisit it, was that image that they put out of him from the Epstein files. And I just thought the aim is still to make it that Michael Jackson is a child predator. And I just wondered whether he was used as a distraction for many, many years. Because in the same way, Mel's talked about how Prince Andrew is a distraction, and I get that. Was Michael Jackson a distraction from much worse real things that were happening? I'm just wondering. Thank you, Jill. I very much appreciate that. Thank you for the super chat. Very much appreciate it. So I'm just wondering, really, anybody's thoughts? Mud sticks. Who said that? Said Billy Bogus. I seem to have lost my @ symbol. Oh, that's something else. The fact that Culkin and Feldman don't have a bad word to say about Michael Jackson, even after his death, speaks volumes. And I have also talked to Corey Feldman. You're absolutely right. Thank you, Finn. And no, I have not, Kira. I have not interviewed Michael's British bodyguard. What does he have to say? Seems like it, if you connect the dots. Money's the root of all evil, says Millicent. Do you, Robert? Michael Jackson's song, They Don't Care About Us. And there's that song, They Don't Care About Us. Have you seen some of the symbology in that video? There's obviously like the Eye of Horus and everything. I never, ever believed he was guilty, says Mary. Nikki loves Michael. We were so unaware back then. Yes, we were, Mels. We were so unaware. And people may be corruptible. Yes, lenticular. The love of money, fun times. Absolutely. Search warrant of his home sealed it for me, although that stuff could have been planted. Yes, Amia, it could. But based in Joya says MJ was nonce. Jackson was a victim of child abuse, says Shrops a Rabbit. So even in my own comment section here, people are split about it. So I just wanted to revisit that. That's all I just wanted to do for today. And so thank you for listening to me. Wait, what's that leaked wisdom? I don't know about that. The fact that Michael Jackson's music suddenly featured in PlayStation products immediately after he was murdered speaks volumes about who committed the crime. Is that right? Was it? And Innocent Times and Before We Grew Up. Yes, Trevor, it was. It's like we thought we knew and we didn't. Michelle says, come on, folks, hit the like button. Let me turn to your shout. Right. So Matt, Street Tripal Matt, contacted me on X to say, Sonia, I'm not keen on travelers, but I've noticed on social media there seems to be a high death rate amongst them in their 20s and 30s, especially women. And I wonder if you're not keen because of, well, for a multitude of reasons. But I looked into this. We have a graveyard close to us, and there is a huge section which is devoted to the travelers. And I have to say they are the best graves. Phenomenal masterpieces. Like the people who are grieving and bereaved, they go to a great deal of effort, and there's like huge boards and huge pictures and phenomenal stuff. But I looked into it, and actually it turns out, Matt, that traveller communities, including Irish travellers, Roma and English Welsh, experience a significantly higher death rate, a lower life expectancy and higher infant mortality compared to the general population. Now, I ended up leaving my my streets WhatsApp chat because I didn't like the bigotry that one or two people were displaying in there to do with travellers. I don't like any bigotry or any discrimination. It's just me, right? But I do understand why some travellers get a really bad name. I get that as well. And actually what I discovered is that with travellers, so I left the WhatsApp group because there was a traveller funeral, and the messages in the WhatsApp was, you know, stay in, they're not opening the pub until later, shut the shops and everything, all this sort of stuff. And so I went into the group chat. This is about 3 years ago now. I went into the group chat and said, I see you've settled on who to pick on. Who should we pick on next? And I think, I mean, since then, the people who were there have moved away and not in the street. And people have reminded me, they were like, you're so feisty. You were just not having it. I'm feisty. I was like, no, I wasn't having it. Not at all. No, they're not, Colin. Absolutely not. And why not stay there and defend them? Oh, I did. I did, first of all. And then I just realized that everybody was kind of stuck in the same groove. And so, no, I said what I needed to say. And that is I didn't agree or respect their position at all. But anyway, I want to just talk about this. So the life expectancy is 10 to 15 years shorter than the general population. Some studies have actually indicated that 80% of Irish travellers die before the age of 65. Now, I just want to give you a bit of background, right? Why I did defend them and would continue to defend them, and why I see no difference to a traveller and anybody else, okay? And one reason is, when I was very, very young, my mum, for reasons best known to herself, and she's no longer around and we can't ask her, but for reasons best known to herself, my mum gave up our council house and moved me and my siblings onto a traveller site for a period of time. I've been told it was for a year, and we live with travellers. So I come from an Irish Welsh background. My mum was a medium. It's very much a landscape and community that I understand. So there's definitely no bigotry from me. And then it was odd because then we ended up moving back into our old house. I don't know how they kept the council house open for us, but anyway, they did. And they know about being a free man. Mel said they got a few sites near my village. I have no problems with them. We chat, they trot horses. I think we can learn. Let me see. I think we can learn a thing or two from the traveling community. I agree. And Mr. Baz said the irony of travellers is that everybody wants to move them on. Thank you, Soul Sam. We're all travellers in this skin suit. I will, Kira. I'll look him up. So there's that. So yes, absolutely, there is a reduced life expectancy, and this is for a number of reasons. This is also to do with violence within the groups as well. But a lot of the kind of markers that are indicated that are actually killing travellers apparently, and why there is such a mortality rate, is suicide is a major issue, with rates up to 6 or 7 times higher for traveller men and women compared with the general population. There is also a high degree of cardiovascular disease, respiratory illnesses, and cancer are common causes of death, apparently more so than the rest of the population. And so all of that's really interesting. A 2024 study found that suicide rates for Irish traveller women aged 25 to 64 are more than twice those of white British women, while men in the same age group have a rate of 1.6 times higher. Really sad. John, I thought the same. I thought they had strong family bonds. I thought that too, right? No one says tinkers anymore. I wonder what the origin of that is. Female infant mortality. Right. I'm going to address that. Absolutely. Traveller infant mortality is 3.6 times higher than that of the general population. Really sad stuff. Bare knuckle boxing. Right. Yes, indeed. So yes, that was sent in, and more than happy to address it. But how sad, what a sad outcome. And something nicer and just kind of like all around better. Daughter bought tickets. My daughter bought tickets for us to go to Pope's Grotto. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Pope's Grotto. It's only open 33 days a year. 33 is regularly mentioned around it. It's interesting, wasn't it, when Graham Moore said earlier that he was married for 33 years. Not for a second do I believe him to be a Freemason. I don't think he is, right? Any traveling doctors for them? Apparently not. So anyway, so we went to this place called Pope's Grotto. Pope's Grotto is in Twickenham, and it was the original home of 18th century poet Alexander Pope between 1720 and 1744. And he built this incredible Twickenham villa, and it's located beneath Radnor House School. It's a grade 2 listed building. It's kind of like subterranean classical style. It was designed to connect his house to his gardens, and once featured mirrors, minerals, and fossils. And I love stuff like this. I love visiting grottos, which is why my daughter made sure to get a ticket. And they're so rare that she actually had to get it on New Year's Eve, and they made them available in a very short window. And my daughter managed to purchase these tickets for us at 1 a.m. on New Year's Eve, which is amazing because I think she was out partying. So incredible stuff. First I've heard of it. Well, I'm going to show you it because I'd like to do that. So this is Pope's Grotto. It's actually phenomenal. But I just want to give you a little bit of background about Alexander Pope. So Alexander Pope was a really interesting character. I didn't know as much about him, but essentially he was disabled. He was only 4'6". He was bullied because he was disabled, but he was also not allowed to live in central London because he was Catholic. And he had to move out to Twickenham, which is obviously slightly outer. It's Greater London, because Catholics were not allowed to live in central London at the time. But the thing that Alexander Pope was he was a big critic of the government, the first government, which was Robert Walpole, who was the first ever prime minister of Great Britain. He was also a big critic of royalty. Sounds like me. Sounds like me, except I don't have that kind of property or that money. But he was a self-made man. He was self-educated from the age of 12. And in part, it was because he was like disabled, and he was only 4'6" and all this sort of stuff. But anyway, this is the cave, the grotto that he built. Have a look. It's lovely.
Wow, look. So pretty. Yeah. Okay.
Is this him? There's a face hidden up there. There's all these incredible designs which are hidden. There's another one. This is lovely. Apparently a symbolism of world peace. I feel very blessed to have this so close to where we live. And that, where you see me coming out at the end, is actually the entrance to the original house. Absolutely wonderful. And so Nicky, he designed this and had it built for him, because what he'd done was he'd come from, you know, this situation where he was bullied, he was ostracized. And sometimes those are great motivating factors for people. They kind of just drive people on. Lisa, I picked up incredible energy there, and I felt really inspired that there were people in the 18th century who were like, you know, very critical of government and the corruption. He was constantly criticizing the corruption that was taking place, and that was the first prime minister. He was absolutely in opposition to the system. So it was wonderful to think, you know, to be there in his house. And that was his bunker, says Avril. So what they'd done, Avril, he'd created that because he wanted a place where he could go and kind of, you know, think about his poetry and just think about anything away from the darkness of corruption of politicians and royalty. I mean, it just sounds like today. It sounds like today. It's incredible. Absolutely incredible. What's the nearest tube station, Sonia? Now, probably Twickenham, actually. It's not that far from Twickenham station. You'd kind of like come out of Twickenham, walk down the road, end of the road, then cross over the road and then go over another road. And probably I'd say about a good 10 minutes walk. Well worth a visit. But as I say, it's only open 33 days a year, but absolutely well worth a visit. I felt incredible after coming out there, because I was like, it's so good to know that there have been people before us who have been prepared to fight the system. But then it also made me feel a little bit depressed, because it's like, if somebody who actually had managed to acquire all that money and some power was not able to take the system down, what hope for people like me? But we will keep trying, won't we? We absolutely will. Because me personally, I saw somebody mention anarchy earlier, and I don't think we understand anarchy. I think often, and I think this is what the person was saying, I don't know who said it, but I think oftentimes when we think about anarchy, we think about like insanity and chaos and everything. It doesn't have to be like that. Anarchy is just not adhering to the system. And I kind of have more of an approach like that. I don't believe that the system is the solution. I believe that the system is what maintains us and keeps us in place. That's my personal opinion. And actually, I think it might be also Ray J's. Ray J is often in the comments, and he wrote to me saying, "Hey, Sonia, where does it end? I've been politically homeless for years. As a youngster, I voted Labour for years in the hope of a Scottish independence referendum. Mission accomplished there. Then I voted SNP for a long time. I've come to realise the political party name means nothing. Labour have always killed the job market when in power. Conservatives have conserved nothing other than income for the elite," in quotes. Liberal Democrats are neither liberal or democratic. It all comes down to funding in election campaigns. You get what you pay for. in the political world, not in the taxpayer world. Taxpayers fund the oligarch income, and that is their main aim. Uniparty is the hidden truth that bleeds cash from the people. I thought, what an eloquent email about the state of play that we're dealing with. And I do sometimes get so kind of like down about the people who are attempting to lead us. And some people have said to me, why don't you go into politics then? I would not enjoy politics. I think it would just kill off my whole vibe about who I am and what I'm about. The only reason I report on it is because it's about world affairs. So bit of a difficult situation. Nice Grotto leaked wisdom, right? So yeah, lovely. It was lovely. Absolutely lovely. Was it expensive? What's that? Graham is right. Oh, what's that? You can't say 33 days without picking that up, Sonia. I know, right? I can't. It's impossible. Our democracy, not yours. Bigots. What's that? You're too integrity-driven for politics. Huge respect for Ray J. Yeah, Trevor. Absolutely brilliant email. He's spot on. Thank you, of course, to your response to our Friday show, the deep dive into Sir David Attenborough. Just wow. Sheila wrote in, said, thank you for your story about David Attenborough, which I very much enjoyed. I suspected him from when his program started to go preachy. And then Sheila recalls, I recently watched a Bear Grylls adventure with President Barack Obama, filmed when he was still in office. Obama did not do the usual abseiling tasks, etc. He and Bear simply walked a short way to a glacier to show how much it had receded in the last few decades. Close-ups of them filling up cups with melting glacial water. Much talk of climate change. So many influential people are in on it. They are in on the scam. Yes, they are. I was very touched by James' comment on this video. Said rarely make any comments. However, I felt compelled after sitting right through all of this with great interest and thought it damn good. My family was surprised to have watched me stay in place on the couch for the whole time. As with a lot of these types, there's always more to them than meets the eye. That's like almost 2.5 hours. When I start those investigations, live investigations, I have no idea how long they're going to take. So it's long. 2.5 hours I would not be able to, but the fact that James sat on the couch all that time listening to it really touches me, actually. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And so I really enjoyed Nigel's comment. Said, I wish this channel was a coffee shop. What nice grounded people, no sarcasm. And honestly, for the most part, I mean, people, they like to have a good old cut and thrust and shove in the comments, live chat and everything. And some people have a go at me, and they're absolutely entitled to, because the thing is, I'm highly opinionated, clearly. So that invites other people to be opinionated. But I do like the fact that for the most part, we try and kind of reach a place where we're all okay. And I really like the idea of us being a coffee shop, because I actually think our community is really amazing. And I do love the idea of a coffee shop. Somebody recently suggested to me, would I be interested in doing like a series of like coffee shop tours? I really like that idea. 1111 says Jacqueline, open minds here only. Absolutely. What's going on? Thank you, Reba. I really appreciate that. We're lovely here, Nikki. We blooming well are. And I saw that somebody had gone to Elon Musk Grok to ask about my David Attenborough deep dive. And Grok had responded. So David Attenborough is the national treasure referenced. Key accusations from Sonia Poulton's video. He promotes depopulation, calling humans a plague, linking to eugenics, Fabian society. He spreads climate alarmism with misleading footage, e.g. walrus deaths, polar bears, and has hypocritical ties to royals, WEF, while living affluently. And then it said that the counter view is that many of the claims dismiss many claims as denialist propaganda. He emphasizes sustainable population for environmental health, not control. Well, of course, they always say that. David Attenborough is not going to come out and say, I want depopulation in order to be able to control the masses. So actually, I was quite happy with Grok's assessment of it. Thank you. I was quite happy with that. And Jean, lovely Jean, had contacted me about David Attenborough. And Jean is a vegan and said that even people, that he's essentially not a national treasure. And he's not even a vegetarian, says Jean. And that was my point, because, again, like... stop smoking cigarettes. I can still be around smokers. Yeah, stopped eating animals as much as I humanly could, but I don't judge people because I think we all have our own path. But I do judge somebody who's been set up as kind of like Lord of the Animals, which he has, and I don't like that. But Jean sent us in a lovely picture. Well, she sent us in a few lovely pictures, but this is my favourite. It reminds me of my mummy. And the reason I say that is whenever I see, oh, come on, where have I got it? I've got to show at least this. It's a beautiful picture of a robin. Whenever I see a robin, it always reminds me of my mum. And my mum loved robins. And my mum passed when I was 11 years old. Jean, where's your picture of the robin? I can't have moved it on somewhere else. I'm going to show you. Even if I'm here until 11:30, I'm going to show you. I was sure I had put it there for us. Well, you know what? In that case, I'm going to show you a picture of this because she sent me 4 beautiful pictures, including of her marching. And this is a creature who has failed to be protected by the likes of David Attenborough in our grand wilderness. What is a robin? A robin, you know, a robin, a bird. Look at that beautiful fox. I love robins too. Jean, I'm going to find it for next week if I don't find it for today, because it was just so lovely. Absolutely lovely image. Jean is, here it is. Look at this. Jean is a sensational photographer. I love Jean's photography. Let me just bring that in. And things like this is really important to me. Not only do I love showing people's art, so I think that's important. Look at that. That's a robin. That's a robin. Mobile wake up coffee bus. Lots of foxes in London. Wow, me too. Robins even flew in kitchen after my mum died. Deirdre. So you associate it, right? Okay, I got you. Wonderful. Foxes are stunning, Reba. And Jean, I love your images. I think you're a fantastic photographer. I really do. And I don't know whether you're professional or not. You certainly should be. But if you have a link that you'd like me to put in the description, I'd be more than happy to do that, my love. Wonderful stuff. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. And we need that, don't we? Because we get so much doom and gloom around here. It's painful. I just want to say thank you as ever to my wonderful donators, to Catherine Sengupta, to Helen O'Carroll, to Tosin Koiki, to Becky from Houndtooth Shop, to the super chatters today. You people are stars. To Kath Hutton, to, did I go past that? To Sticky Marks. She's given me 2. Thank you. You're not Nana Weirdo. She says, good morning, Sonia. I've given up trying to get my prescription for meds I need to take, despite being on the same medication for over 10 years every 4 weeks. Is now too complex. You're not Nana Weirdo. Not at all. Thank you for your kindnesses, people. I very much appreciate that. And as I said, thank you, Jill. And Sticky Marks donated a second time saying, Justice, no, they don't care. But we do. Don't we? We care, and that's what's important. Thank you for Friday's super chat, Swiss Miss, Gemma Mullen, and love you too, Gemma, to 12. And some from last week that I think I failed to comment on, Paul Cardin and Jamie Dodger. Thank you all so very, very much. I very much appreciate you. I want to talk about the Sophia stage at the end of our show today. Are we familiar with it? It is part of Jung's analytical psychology, Carl Jung. It's named after the Greek word for wisdom. It represents the highest point of psychological maturity and individuation. And essentially, it is the inner feminine archetype. And it's when it's fully integrated into the psyche and functions as a guide to our inner life. And I've been forced to think about this because I'm obviously not a child. I'm 61 years old and happy to be 61 years old. Wouldn't want to be a child again. Let me tell you, I don't want to go back to my youth. I love being this age. And one of the reasons I love being this age is because I think I might be heading towards my Sophia stage. So the Sophia stage it's, as I say, named after the Greek word for wisdom. And what's interesting for me, because a friend mentioned this to me, what's interesting to me is Sonia derives from the name Sophia. So I just thought, oh, this is interesting. And really what it's about this internal wisdom. Okay. The anima functions as a mediator, and it's like 4 stages of the anima development that Jung talked about. There was Eve, which represented the purely biological, which was like focusing on nourishment and security. The second stage is Helen, which represents a romanticized kind of ideal. And that's often associated with like talent and intelligence and those things that we express and bring into the world. Then there's Mary, which represents a more spiritualized virtuous and nurturing figure. And then you get to Sophia, which represents wisdom and like the complete humanization of the feminine principle. But what it also is, and I think this is important, is this is like the stage of peace to a certain degree. Now, I have been through so much chaos in my life, not in a kind of victimhood way, not at all. Some of my best lessons have been learned through chaos. I'm a school of hard knocks person. That's who I am. And what I actually think this is, the Sophia stage for me, is about this kind of wholeness and integration. And ultimately, it's about embracing all aspects of myself. And that includes the stuff I don't like. And that's where I'm up to. Like, I can even now recognize and acknowledge the aspects of my character that I don't necessarily like, which might be every now and again an insecurity from childhood kind of reminds me that it's still there. And I've done loads of shadow work and I will continue to do that. But for the most part, I think I'm over the hump. And I think last year was one of the biggest learning curves for me. And a lot of it actually was to do with being here, because there's nothing like being live, facing an audience where people can say what the heck they want to in the live stream, and I'm seeing it and acknowledging it and often reading it out as well. And honestly, it really shapes you up. And I really like that. I do. And I think what it's done also is it's created this internal harmony. And that expression, don't sweat the small stuff, is absolutely made for this moment in my life. And it's not an age-related thing, and it's not a gender-related thing. You can have reached your Sophia stage at 20. Some people are just that way inclined, where they have reached that integration, where they can see the whole. They don't get dragged down and drawn into the kind of like the flotsam and jetsam of every day. And, and it's really, I like it. I'm more confident expressing myself, admitting my faults too. And the thing is, lenticular cloud, all of that's great, right? It's okay when we acknowledge I'm not perfect, right? And that's okay. What's that? Oh, what's that, Lyra? If you like that sort of thing, Hawkston Park in Shropshire is a good day out. Stephen found that the C19 brought out the angry side to him at times. That's okay. Who's in love? Howlin', who are you in love with? Being your own boss is a bomb. Marcuson, you can't beat it, mate. You cannot beat it. And I think that over this last year, thanks to you, to people who write into me, to the people on the live chat, I think that this has been a form of therapy. I think it's been really therapeutic in many respects. I think after my experiences of working in organizations that didn't value me the way that I deserve to be valued, frankly, and deciding that I was going to go it alone and do it myself. And as I said before, I jumped and you caught me. And I think what's happened over the last year and a half is actually just kind of like really built up my sense of self and who I am. And even the fragmented parts of me, I've been able to acknowledge them and incorporate them into who I am. Thank you. Jerry Reed said, enjoyed you being opinionated. Love the Attenborough video. I truly appreciate that. Thank you so much. Hooli TV, why are you lying about my channel? I don't have moderators. Says Hooli TV often pops in claiming that this is not a free speech channel, now claiming that we have moderators. So they're saying, why would a free speech channel have moderators? We don't have moderators. So honestly, it's that sort of thing, which I think is really great, because I can instantly dispel that lie right there and then. Isn't it good? It's great. The Sophias of the old world were named witches and done away with. Power, female, and wisdom a threat, says Pickles. I'm more in a stage of decline, just trying to land smoothly. So it's all good. It's all good stuff. It's all good stuff. And even the people who come in lie about me, as somebody just did, as you can tell. Yes, lenticular, absolutely. Soul Sam, you were one of my moderators, and that was probably close to a year ago now, right? When I decided, okay, and I was so grateful to my moderators because they'd helped me start that transition. But now, no, absolutely dealing with it. All good. Do you like my gonzo journalism? Do you, drumstick? Okay, love it. I do envy you living with the travelers. My mum was a traveler. Really, Del? Okay, got you. It's all good, says Randy. Right, as ever, thank you to my wonderful patrons, to everybody who makes this possible. And I'm going to end on a quote. I might even end on two quotes. No, I'm going to end on one. And that is, if you have truly attained wholeness, everything will flock to you. And the reason that I say that, and I think it's really important because I am in no doubt whatsoever, and that is once you decide what you want to do, which is usually what you enjoy and what you're good at, right? Once you decide, it's like the universe rises up to greet you and supports you in your endeavors, which is what happened to me. And you are my universe. That's it. Love from Australia. Love to you too, Helena. Oh, Hooli TV, sorry, I gave you a cuss and you weren't talking about my channel. I apologize. I'm also capable of apologizing as well. Thank you, Bridie. Thank you so much. Yes, Soul Sound. We went after Hooli TV, didn't we? But sorry, we didn't mean to. Hello, Australia, says NCP. Listen, I love you all. Thank you for being here. Thank you for my guests. Please support Catherine O'Sullivan in Finding Jack. I appreciate you all so very, very much. Have a good week, everyone, says Stephen. And so say me. Lots of love to you all. Thank you, Jeannie, our star photographer. Lots of love to you all. Take good care. See you Friday, folks.